Why do I feel like life is taking a long time? I landed on is that a lot of stuff has happened in my life. The other thing about a book is that you write and you write and you write and you write and you write, and the light at the end of the tunnel is very, very small. Not only do I feel like I'm not wasting my time, I don't generally feel like life is short. You don't know what's best for you. It's possible. You should consider that you don't always know what's best for you. Other people might know more about you in that regard than you know yourself. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something, Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber, and we're going to talk today about making things and meaning things, because what does that actually mean? What does meaning mean? Well, we don't have to define what meaning means, but a couple of things happened recently that I reacted, I think, oddly to, and then thought about a lot and decided, well, this might be worth talking about on the podcast. So about 2 weeks ago, a video popped up in my YouTube feed from an older gentleman who was giving life advice. It was like, here's what I would tell my younger self. If I could talk to me when I was 18, here are the things that I would tell him, that sort of thing. This video had millions of views. I'm like, all right, I will bite. Let's see what this older gentleman, what life advice he has to give to his former self, his younger self, what he would do differently, that sort of thing. And he basically just said that the most important thing that you have is time. So that's what he would tell his younger self is to really appreciate that time is the most valuable commodity in human life. It's the thing you really should pay attention to make the most out of your life with the limited amount of time that you have, that sort of thing. And I, rather than being sort of in awe or inspired by it, I just gave like a shrug to that. I was like, I don't feel like I'm not worried about that. Not only do I feel like I'm not wasting my time, I don't generally feel like life is short. Now, there are obvious reasons for that. I've had a lot of good luck with my health, and there are plenty of people who haven't. So that plays a tremendous role in how I feel about my life. And that I have been, healthy for all of it, and hopefully will remain healthy for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I was listening to him talk about how short life is, and, it passes you by in a blink, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're 65 or whatever. And I was like, I just don't feel that way. Like, I'm 41 now, and I feel like it's been a while. Quite honestly, my initial thought was like, I feel like life is taking a long time. Like, I don't feel like it's short at all. I feel like this is taking a while. So it immediately felt to me like an odd response. Like, why do I think that life is taking a long time? That seems totally counterintuitive and maybe unhealthy in the grand scheme of things. But what am I going to do? So I was left with that feeling. I'm like, okay, that was a pretty odd experience. And then something happened this week, like just a few days ago. I popped over to Facebook, the worst social media platform in existence, and the first thing on my feed was a picture of a classmate from high school, and it was a picture of her and some of the other people that I went to high school with in like cheerleader uniforms, so it was this girl I went to high school with and some of my other classmates as cheerleaders. That's the point. That was the picture. Those, just like a nostalgic old picture of the high school days she was posting on Facebook. And the top comment on it was from another girl that I went to high school with saying that this feels like yesterday. Okay. That was her reaction to this photo of her high school classmates in high school. This feels like it was yesterday. And I was like, no, it doesn't at all. Like, that doesn't feel like yesterday at all to me. Like, not even a little bit. It feels like a lifetime ago. Like, high school to me feels so distant and so long ago and like such a lifetime ago that it literally almost feels like it was another person. That it's like not even me who went through their high school years. Like, it might as well be somebody else's, like my memory, might as well watch a movie of somebody else in high school. Like, that's the level of connection that I have with my own high school days. But, this girl who was in the same class as me, who I went to high school with, so we are literally the same distance away from it, feels the complete opposite. Like, you couldn't get more of an opposite feeling towards that than I had with what she was saying. This feels like it was yesterday. So I'm like, why do I not feel like it was yesterday? Why do I not feel like it was yesterday? B, why do I feel like it was such a distant memory? It like barely happened. And to connect it to the other old man's, advice video, why do I feel like life is taking a long time? So I sat and I thought about that for a couple of days because it kind of shook me. It's weird to feel so, I don't know, disparate from people just in general. Like, why do I feel so differently about all of this stuff? Why do I think so differently about it? Is it a bad thing? Is something wrong with me? Those are the types of things that you end up ruminating about. And what I landed on as being the major culprit as to why I feel this way is that a lot of stuff has happened in my life. A lot of stuff has occurred between me being in high school and me sitting and recording this podcast right now. Like, I feel like 10 lifetimes of stuff has occurred in that span, which is why it feels so long ago and I feel so distant from it. So I've actually never really talked about my past on the podcast. There hasn't been a moment where I've discussed all of the different things that I've done, certainly not in any sort of depth because it hasn't come up and it hasn't really been relevant. And I also just generally don't think too much about the past because I'm always concerned about what I'm working on right now. So what I'm working on right now is this book, Sleep Warrior. I just passed 33,000 words total. I've got 10 chapters roughed out, which I'm really excited about and happy about. I don't know how long it'll end up being. I don't know how much longer I have to go. I was thinking yesterday at this rate, I'm just hoping that by the end of this year, I'll have like a workable rough draft to do something with. I imagine it will end up taking a full year. But this is what occupies my mind is like whatever it is that I'm working on right now and doing everything that I can today to set myself up to be in a position to, progress tomorrow. So worrying about what I did 20 years ago is just not that relevant to what I have to do today and tomorrow. Anyway, that is to say, well, a couple of things. One is that I wonder, like I'm not saying definitively one way or the other, but I do wonder if by doing a lot of things in your life, a lot of different things, maybe is a good qualifier. By doing a lot of different things in your life, if it insulates you a bit or protects you a bit from having that feeling of life passing you by, because that seems horrible to me. Regardless of some sort of catastrophic event, like put that aside, that's its own thing. There's nothing really that you or anyone can do about some catastrophe occurring. But as far as the things that are within your control, like barring catastrophe, my new hypothesis here is that the more different experiences that you have, I think the better that you would feel later in life. And I guess the longer your life feels, maybe that's the best way to categorize it. Just seems to me like this. And maybe I'll feel differently when I'm 65 and I make some YouTube video telling people that they should cherish every moment or whatever. So maybe I'm just not there yet, and maybe I'll get there later. But the reason I don't think that is the seems like it was yesterday high school stuff, because that's obviously a pretty popular sentiment where people feel like, oh, it was just yesterday that we were all on the cheerleading team and we were going to, earth science class. And I'm like, no, not for me. Like, that doesn't feel like yesterday at all. It feels like a million years ago. Okay. So, like, what are all the things that I've done that I haven't talked about on this podcast? Okay. After high school, I briefly went to Drexel University in Philadelphia for computer science. I have talked about this on the podcast. I actually put this in a popular science video last year too. That didn't last long because it was really clear very early on that I was not equipped or interested in pursuing computer science. So I dropped out, I moved back home, and then I eventually was kind of strong-armed by my parents to go to a different college. I didn't want to go to college. I literally was fine working in a restaurant, washing dishes at that time. And I told them that. I was like, yeah, I mean, what do you want to do with your life? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm cool. I like being a dishwasher. I could play my guitar after work. And that seems like a fine life to me. Did not seem like a fine life to them. So what I decided to do as a compromise was to just go to a relatively close state school. It wouldn't be very expensive, so I wouldn't be in like all kinds of student debt afterwards. I just did the most generic major I could think of, which was communications. Eventually, I took my roommate took a film class. He was also a communications major, and he took a film class. And one day for an assignment, he asked me to hold the camera for him. He had to, shoot something for the class. He needed a cameraman. I'm right there. Hey, will you come outside with me and I got to shoot a video for this class? Yeah, sure. That moment changed for me, my major. I was like, wait, okay, so I could major in film? That seems pretty cool. Like I could get down with that. That seems interesting to me, to major in something where you can just make creative projects. So I switched my major to film and digital film and television. Ended up going through school with that. For my senior capstone project, there was a little bit of drama where I wrote a screenplay that was so for our major, your big thesis at the end was you had to make a short film, like utilizing all of the skills over the years of all the different classes about filmmaking. Okay, now for your final project to graduate, you had to put all of those skills together and make a film. And the class all worked together. You were split up into two groups. So the entire class had two groups. And, everybody had a different job. You'd have one person would be the director of photography. They would be in charge of that. Somebody else was the writer. Someone else was the director, assistant producer, blah, 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 all the way down the line. I wanted to write. So I wrote a screenplay. Everybody had to write something. The whole class had to write something. And then the rest of the class voted on or decided which would be made into a film. So I wrote a screenplay about the premise of it was a dark comedy. The premise was that a guy is going to break up with his girlfriend, but before he can break up with her, she gets kidnapped. And so the movie is about him trying to rescue his girlfriend so that he could break up with her. that was my short film that I wrote that everybody really liked in the class, and it got chosen to be produced. Well, the director just murdered my script, like literally just completely changed it. It started with some arguments over some scenes and some characters, and then it turned out that he just dumped the whole thing and was writing his own script. So I flipped out about that, okay? Because I really wanted to make this idea. I thought it was a funny idea. I liked the premise. Obviously, I wrote it. Thought it was very funny to have a movie where a guy, like a Taken or Ransom scenario where a guy's like desperately trying to get his girlfriend back for the sole purpose of breaking up with her. Thought that was funny. Anyway, I freaked out. I went to our professor and I told her I'm not working on this because he destroyed my thing and I don't want to work on his stupid thing, which I thought sucked. So I asked her, I'm like, will you give me an exception and allow me to write another script and I'll just make that? Like I will like literally peel myself out of the whole class and make like a rogue project that I'm interested in. So what ended up happening was a couple of other kids in the class got fired from their productions. And I was like, I will take them. So let me take the two guys that were fired from their projects, from what they wanted to do in their projects. So just the three of us will make our own like rogue short film sort of outside of the class. Yeah, Boss Threads in the chat says Misfits Crew. That's what it was. It was like the Misfit Crew, me and two other guys. And meanwhile, the other films had like over a dozen people on each crew to make the films. And I was like, I don't care. Give me two guys. Give me the two fired guys and we're going to make our own project. So miraculously, she agreed. And that's what we ended up doing. So we ended up making our own little movie. It was about a reclusive guy who was obsessed with milk, and he just wanted to go to the store to buy some milk. That was the whole premise of the short film, but he was really scared of leaving the house. So just leaving the house to get some milk ended up being like, a very heightened and dangerous and frightening journey. So that was its own little saga in my life. After I graduated from college, moved back home, got a job bartending, really enjoyed doing that. Did that for a couple of years-ish, maybe a year and a half, something like that. But then it was like, now what? Graduated from college, living back home. I'm saving up some money, which is cool, but like, what am I going to do? I actually ended up getting a job in New York City as the assistant to the head of Sony BMG Film, which on paper seems like an amazing job. I went to school for film. Now I'm getting this job in Manhattan, working for the head of an entire like gigantic film division. Oh my gosh, this is great. I moved down there. I start my job. By lunchtime on the first day, I wanted to die. Like I hated it so much that I actually just kept going to the bathroom all day just to get away from the desk. Like it was like a visceral hatred for like sitting at that desk halfway through the first day. It wasn't like, oh, after, a year, I decided this wasn't for me. No. Like 3 hours into this job, I was like, I am considering jumping out the window because that would be preferable to sitting at this desk and, answering the phone all day and connecting this person with whoever's calling her. So that lasted. I did stick it out for that full week. Happy to say I didn't just abandon my post at lunchtime and never go back. But I lasted in that job for one full week. And by that Friday, I went into my boss's office and I'm like, look, this is not the job for me. And she was like, I totally understand. I mean, I think it was like really, really obvious. It must have been like resoundingly obvious to her that I was not happy. I mean, look, this is one of the reasons that I was unhappy with this job. Okay. So I was actually the assistant to her assistant, really. So she already had an assistant that had been working for her for 7 years. Okay. 7 years he had been working for her. So he had a desk about 10 feet from my desk. And I'm sitting there 10 feet away from this guy being like, okay, so in 7 years, what I have to look forward to is sitting at that desk 10 feet away. So I'm going to sit at this desk for 7 years in the hopes of graduating to that. Now, that is a completely reductive way of thinking about the situation, but emotionally, that was how I felt about the situation. Emotionally, I was like, I cannot do this. If that's the next rung up this ladder that I have to look forward to, I have to get off this ladder. So anyway, I got out of there. I went back home. I got my job back as a bartender, which I really liked, by the way. One of the things that I say about being a bartender that I really like is that it's you have a totally different role as a bartender compared to a server. I did not like being a server. I was a server for like one summer, and I did not like that at all because as a server, you are 100% beholden to the whims of your tables, to your customers. You are their servant. You're serving them. As a bartender, like you are in control. 100%. It's like if you want to cut somebody off, if you want to kick somebody out, if you want to ignore somebody for a little while because they're bothering you, it's a totally different dynamic between being a server and being a bartender. And I liked being a bartender much more. Anyway, then I decided, well, I should probably just leave my home and go someplace else. I don't know what I'm doing at home. And I don't have any plans for anything. So I should just probably leave. Should just leave this place entirely and just go somewhere else. I don't know where and I don't know why, but it seems like a good idea to just go away. So my good friend and I decided to do that together. He also just wanted to go someplace else. I wanted to go someplace else. He wanted to go someplace else. Great. Let's just go someplace else. So we just packed, whatever fit inside of a Ford Taurus or whatever and drove away. Okay. Like literally just drove away from our homes. The plan was to move to San Francisco initially, but, take our time doing it, go to different cities around the country. Go to Nashville, go to New Orleans, go to Austin, just check out different places. And, if something seemed like an opportunity or a cool place to live, whatever, just go there now. We eventually ended up going past San Francisco and up to Portland, Oregon. By the time we'd gotten to Portland, it was starting to get a little cold and we were both kind of tired of sleeping in the car or sleeping on the couch of somebody who like we happened to know through a friend of a friend in, some city around the United States, and ended up just staying in Portland. What do you do when you just get to a place where you don't have some place to stay? Well, you stay in the car and then you try to find an apartment. Through a girl that I actually went to college with, she introduced us to a guy who did overhire work at a theater company. So overhire work is like they have a bunch of crappy extra work that no one has time for. And so they need just a pair of bodies to like move sets or help paint scenery or, clean up the shop, whatever it is. So we ended up getting this. I mean, it wasn't really a job. It was like infrequently going to this place to get $12 an hour or whatever it was. to like load trucks with insanely heavy scenery for like gigantic theater productions. And then like a girl that worked there ended up saying she was moving out of her apartment and we could move into that apartment. And lo and behold, eventually, okay, now we have a place to stay. So then for 3 years, I lived in Portland and I worked over hire for the theater for a little while. Then I got a job at deep frying chicken wings at a chicken wing place, which I actually really liked. I liked working there. I liked all my coworkers. So I worked there for a few years as a fry cook. And then I ended up getting a job through my friend at a club, at a bar as a bar back. So then I had 2 jobs. So during the week, I would deep fry chicken wings. And then Friday night and Saturday night, I would work at the club, bar backing, which was a grueling job of just carrying around slop buckets and, oh my gosh, just loading up case after case after case of like beer fridges and all that stuff. So I did that for a couple of years. That was when YouTube became a thing. So as I was living in Portland and, working those 2 jobs, working, like 6 days a week, pretty much, YouTube was invented and I became obsessed with YouTube because the idea of being able to like record some stupid skit on my laptop and uploading it to the internet was the greatest thing I'd ever heard of. Because before that, I had tried to get into Portland has like a local cable channel station there that I did some workshops at, and I tried to get in there, but it just seemed like a dead end. So I stopped going to that and just focused my attention on YouTube. That's when I started doing Jerry Bloop stuff. So I invented the Jerry Bloop character and then eventually started doing uninformed video game reviews, which was using the Jerry Bloop character as sort of a angry video game nerd knockoff. It was like a different twist on angry video game nerd where obviously the nerd knew everything about these games. So the Jerry Bloop idea was, what if it was a guy who knew nothing about the games, hasn't played them, cannot afford them. So instead, he just makes up what they're about. So that's what uninformed video game reviews was. And then years later, Conan O'Brien ended up doing a thing called Clueless Gamer. So, and not that I'm saying that Conan O'Brien ripped off Jerry Bloop, but I am saying that it was a little bit validating that the idea was funny. That's all I mean by that. That, Conan and his writing team came up with doing basically the same shtick, which is a person knowing nothing about video games trying to review them or play them or react to them. So I was doing the Jerry Bloop uninformed video game reviews thing, after work. At that time, the people that I worked with thought it was super weird, which it was weird. Like, I'm not saying they were wrong, but there definitely was like a bit of, not that I cared, because I didn't care and I wasn't self-conscious about it. I didn't care if other people thought it was weird. I really liked it. So, who cares if they think it's odd or that I'm strange? I like what I was doing, so I was going to do it sort of regardless of what the people around me thought of it. But that was a real sentiment at that time because, the YouTube was very new. People were not making money off of YouTube. So it's not like, oh, Kevin's working on his influencer career. Like that was not a thing. There were no influencers and it wasn't a career. It was an irrational, weird thing to do, to not go hang out with everybody, not go to the house party or, stay out all night at the bar and instead go home and, put on a fat suit essentially and a headband and pretend to, review video games that you didn't know anything about. Like, obviously that was strange, but I liked doing it. And I did it for a few years until Michael Stevens emailed me about putting uninformed video games on Vsauce. So this whole time, I'm deep frying chicken wings, I'm carrying slop buckets, and I'm being a weirdo making YouTube videos for no reason or for seemingly no reason. And, serendipitously, Michael was in charge of starting this Vsauce thing, which was going to be a video game comedy channel from, the same team of people that made Barely Political, which was extremely popular at that time with like their Obama girl thing. They blew up with that. So they had like a political comedy channel. They wanted to do a video game comedy channel because video games were popular, and it was going to be um, like a cumulatively added to channel. A bunch of different channels were on it. So Wacky Gamer was there, Black Nerd Comedy was there, Green Screen Team was there, and then me. I think that was the early days of Vsauce. I mean, you could just go on Vsauce and, sort by oldest, and you can see, you can see what's there. And you'll find my first upload of Jerry Bloop on Vsauce. The audience did not react positively to Jerry Bloop. It got a lot of thumbs down, but we uploaded a second one there anyway, and that one kind of got a lot of thumbs down too. So it was clear that, Jerry Bloop was not like a runaway smash success with the audience on Vsauce, which wasn't a huge audience, but, no matter the size of the audience, who want to make stuff that they want to watch. And they didn't want to watch Jerry Bloop. So, all right. So I still wanted to send videos to Vsauce because he was paying me $100. Okay? $100 to make a YouTube video? That is amazing. After making probably 300 videos for not $0, I mean negative thousands of dollars probably when you add it all up, spending money on props and, no less the time. But the idea of getting paid $100 to make a YouTube video was mind-blowing to me, even though it's not like that was a lot of money even then. I'm not saying it. I'm not trying to pretend like it was. But the principle of just getting paid to make YouTube videos was enough for me to be totally sold and totally locked in and just willing to do, try different formats, try different videos, just keep making stuff, sending it to Michael, uploading it to Vsauce, and seeing what sticks. So I ended up doing a thing. I did a couple, I think, videos of like overdubbing old, like archival commercials, like really old commercials, overdubbing them for video games, like taking old footage, changing the voices and making it like a stupid commercial for Call of Duty or whatever. Those didn't really get that much positive feedback either. I mean, God bless Michael for sticking with me. But in those days, it wasn't like a lot of it was like overwhelmingly positive. We were really, really just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what people liked. So the first thing that I did for Vsauce that people liked was Mind Blow. I ended up doing Mind Blow, which was like a collection. So, Michael was doing IMG, which was just a collection of funny images, which is such a funny format to think of today, like how quaint that is. But like literally in 2010 or whatever this was, 2011, something like that. The idea of just finding the funniest photos and putting them in a video and making it a funny video, it was like excellent entertainment back then. Those videos were really, really popular because at that time, you didn't have like Instagram, and like if you wanted to look at memes, like maybe you would look at like 9gag or something, or like iFunny, something like that. You'd have to like go to some stupid website, College Humor or eBaum's World, I don't know, whatever, to like look at funny photos. But to be able to just watch a YouTube video with funny commentary, with funny narration of funny photos, wow, like what a revelation that was. So people liked that. Then he came up with Loot, which was kind of the same idea, only it was with products. It was like strange gadgets and goofy things that you could buy. So that was Loot. So this was all like best of the web stuff. Now that was really like the early days of successful videos on Vsauce was we got away from the video game comedy, which just wasn't working, to doing best of the web. So, scouring the internet and finding cool stuff and then putting it together in some sort of entertaining, glorified slideshow of a video, really. Mindblow was the first attempt at doing something like that was a little bit more, or as I remember it, maybe I'm misremembering, but it was a little bit of a pivot into doing things that were a little more informational. So it would be like Easter eggs from video games and movies and like illusions. It was like a little bit more like strange stuff from the internet or from pop culture or whatever. This was before Mindblow was like a science news show. So by this point, Michael and I were the only ones uploading on Vsauce. Like the other people who had contributed, like they were no longer being uploaded because their stuff just wasn't resonating with the audience. What the audience liked were the videos that Michael were making that were best of the web. And then they really liked Mindblow, so I kept doing that. Michael created Vsauce 2, which is where I think he started Loot. I don't even remember why he created Vsauce 2 and spun off like Loot over there. It's so pathetic that I don't even remember that. But in those days, you would just create more channels for some reason, Smosh 2 or whatever. So then we had Vsauce 2. And that's when I think I started doing FAQ over there. We had all these acronym shows. So FAQ was facts and knowledge. The idea of FAQ was just to take like one topic, like laser beams or crossbows or something, and just make a video about like one thing. Like, here's a video about crossbows. And like, here's just some sweet different videos that I found about crossbows. That would be a video. That was FAQ. Then Michael did, what is the hottest pepper or something like that, where, he was really into hot sauce, I think, and then just started like learning about Scoville units and, wanted to make a video that was about the hottest pepper you could eat. And then that was like super popular. That was really, really popular when Michael just kind of did a deep dive into some subject. So, eventually we made the decision to just split up the channels so that Michael would just do Vsauce. I would just do Vsauce 2. I moved Mindblow from Vsauce over to Vsauce 2. So now Mindblow was on Vsauce 2. So Vsauce 2 was like FAQ and Mindblow. And then, created a bunch of other shows. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 riddle challenge, because I had been doing riddles at the end of Mindblow for a while. And that was fun. So I thought, I'll just make a whole video that had riddles at the end. BDP was a show that I created to, because I just love art in general. I love art. I love music. I thought there should be an art and music show. So that's what BDP was build it, draw it, play it. So, it'd be 4 people who built something crazy like a robotic dragon, and then 4 different artists, different artwork, and then, 4 musicians for play it, different songs that I thought were cool or had cool music videos or whatever. So that was like an artist showcase show, but still, again, like best of the web. And then Michael went really down the rabbit hole of just doing those like informational videos. He started doing videos asking weird questions. Why do we kiss? Whatever, stuff like that. You guys are all familiar with those Vsauce videos. What if everybody in the world jumped at the same time? Just like odd questions, and then exploring and trying to find an answer. So the point is that even just the first like year or 2 of doing Vsauce, like a lot was going on, because at that time I was still, I'd still had other jobs, and then I was doing like this Vsauce thing on the side, and then Vsauce or Next New Networks, was purchased by Google, and it was turned into the Next Lab because like Google wanted to learn more about YouTube creators. So they bought that business, and then they developed all of these different branches within YouTube of like audience development, and they created like a best practices playbook, and like all this stuff is going on. I ended up moving to New York City for a little while. I lived in Brooklyn and was working out of the office in Manhattan doing Vsauce stuff. Jake was wandering around the office because he was doing freelance stuff. So like a million years ago, Jake, he went to school for film too, and he was doing like freelance commercial making. And then he ended up doing like freelance YouTube stuff. So he was in the office all the time. We wanted to create a Vsauce 3 because Vsauce and Vsauce 2, were growing so rapidly. Well, we should go and create Vsauce 3 so we could scale and expand. The idea with Vsauce 3 was to take Vsauce back to its roots and do video game stuff with the learnings of doing educational videos. So, the beginning of Vsauce 3, the educational videos were done by this guy, Joey DeCina, who is like a Jeopardy champion now, by the way. So shout out to Joey. It's amazing. He was on Jeopardy last year. So Joey DeCina was doing informational video game stuff. So it was like how much are Mario's coins worth? How heavy is Cloud from Final Fantasy VII's sword? I think was one of the first ones. It might have been the first one. I'm the one who brought Joey in because I knew him from the video game, like the Jerry Bloop days. I made a lot of friends in the Jerry Bloop days in like the video game YouTuber community. And, Joey was in that because he was one of the early people making video game YouTube videos. He had a full-time, like very good job. He was like a literal chemist for like a light bulb company in North Carolina. So he was like, I'm just going to be like a chemist. Like, I'm not going to do this YouTube stuff full time anymore. So he stopped. So that's when Jake ended up taking over full time on Vsauce 3. Because in the early days, it was Joey, myself. I was doing a show called Video Game WTFs, which was like glitches. It was like a lot of bugs and glitches and like funny bugs where, you get a clip of a soccer player in FIFA with their legs broken, like running down the field. Aha, that's so funny. Look at his legs. Like that was a show. That was an early show that I did on Vsauce 3. And then obviously Jake ended up taking over Vsauce 3 full time, and he branched out away from just doing video game stuff and did comic book stuff, and he did movie stuff. And then that channel was really popular. I ended up moving to Los Angeles because at this time, YouTube was opening these things called the Spaces, the YouTube Spaces. And YouTube had this great idea that they were going to have like studios for YouTubers. So they bought this like gigantic Howard Hughes airplane hangar in Playa Vista, I think, Los Angeles, and converted it into film studio essentially. And there were offices there. So then I moved there. I moved to Los Angeles. I was working in the office there, and I was like the resident YouTuber. So like I had my own room in the YouTube space where I would make Vsauce 2 videos. And I had an assistant who would help me with those videos. That's when I started doing Thought Glass, which was a show that I did with a transparent glass whiteboard. And the idea with that was, it was like a really wacky idea where I would print out all of these stickers on like overhead, like clear, like overhead projector paper, these clear icons, and I would stick them on this transparent whiteboard. And then in post-production, Eric Langley, who did all of our VFX, would animate them. So then, I did that show for a while, and I was living in Los Angeles. And during all of this, there's all these events to go to. There's, VidCon, and Vsauce is getting so much more popular. There's also a lot of meetings because we were working with the YouTube Next Lab, where we would speak with people internally at YouTube about the development of different products, give them feedback on user experience and just different initiatives that YouTube was doing. So just constantly busy with all of that. So living in Los Angeles, growing Vsauce too, working with YouTube, working in the YouTube space. Eventually, they opened a YouTube space in New York City. So then I moved back to New York City because they wanted to have, a resident creator there. And there isn't like a big, I don't know if you know this, but like YouTube is not really a big thing in New York City because it's just a nightmare of a place to be a YouTuber, aside from Casey Neistat and like a handful of people. I mean, Casey Neistat made New York City his YouTube channel. That's why that worked. Like, that's why Casey got so popular. Is like he turned being in New York City into being a YouTuber. And he vlogged, he made a new video every day for like years. His work ethic was insane. Plus, he's just such a talented filmmaker. Anyway, there are not a lot of YouTubers in New York City. So they're opening up a new YouTube space in Chelsea Market in New York City. And they want somebody there that can, work with other creators who they're going to bring in or just work with other staff, to talk about YouTube. So I ended up moving to New York City and I worked out of that office for a while, had a small team there. And this is just like an endless series of a lot of stuff going on, like a lot of chapters in this book and really kind of condensed over not that long of a period, I guess, when you think about it. But there was just always like major crap happening, like major life events happening at all of these stages. Oh, I didn't even mention that before I moved to, oh God, there's a lot I didn't mention that I really wanted to. Okay, let me go back. When I was in college, I picked up the newspaper. The college that I went to, Fredonia, had its own newspaper. And, the newspaper is just like sitting around in bins, like in the cafeteria. And, everybody grabs it while they eat and they just flip through the Fredonia school newspaper. Well, the newspaper had a comic section and the comics weren't like, Peanuts and Ziggy. They were comics from students. So it was a student newspaper with a student comic section. So that was another moment for me, similar to which I had like later in life when YouTube came along, where I was like, wait a minute. If I draw a comic strip, I could get it published in this newspaper and like people will look at it. That is the coolest thing I've ever heard of in my life. And I am 100% doing that. So I ended up having a friend who was a killer cartoonist, just an absolutely like brilliantly talented illustrator. And I worked with him for a semester where I would write the comic. I would, sketch it out. I would storyboard it, write all the words, give it to him, and then he would draw it. So I did that for a semester. And then this dude didn't want to do it anymore. I think we did a run of like 6 or 7 comics. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, okay, I'll just do it myself. So I did it myself. So I just started drawing the thing, continuing to write. I would submit a new one every single week without fail. I never missed a week. No matter what was going on in my life, I'd draw a new comic and I would send it into the newspaper and they would publish it. It was incredibly awesome. Well, wouldn't you know that the girl who was in charge of the comic section was graduating and she needed somebody to take it over. So who does she end up asking to take it over but the guy who is like obsessively submitting comics every week? That was me. I was obsessed with making comics. I never missed a week. So she asked me like, hey, I'm leaving and the newspaper needs an editor, a comic editor. Do you want to do this? And I was like, yes, definitely. That sounds awesome. So now I have a job on campus, which is, I'm the editor of this section of the school newspaper. So, I'd have to go in twice a week. We would have a staff meeting on Wednesday where everybody would, talk about whatever was going on in the newspaper. And then on Saturday, I would have to do layout. if there was space that needed to be filled, that, because not enough people had submitted comics that week, then I would have to make another comic. So I inventing a filler comic, a second comic that I would do. So now every week I'm doing two comics. I'm doing the main comic that I originally was doing, and now I'm doing a second comic that I created because in terms of page layout, I just needed to fill the space. So now I'm doing two comics every week, and then, doing all of the other sort of boring stuff involved in actually putting the page together and everything. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't we do satirical articles? Like, I asked not our editor-in-chief. So we had an editor-in-chief, obviously, who was a student, but then there was an advisor above them that was like really kind of in charge of the newspaper, a professor, an adult in the room. Like, can I get another page? Like, can I get my own second page in this newspaper where I could do like onion style satirical articles, essays? And they're like, yeah, I guess. I guess so. I guess you could have another. So now I have two pages. So now I have the comics page, and now I have another full page in the newspaper of like articles, which I'm also writing. So I didn't fill the page. I would fill half the page. So half the page, I would write a new article every week. And then I found other people to fill the other half of the page. So now I'm doing two comics. I'm doing the layout. I'm writing a satirical essay, and, I'm doing all of the layout and like admin work every single week on top of, going to class. All right. So I'm doing all that stuff, which I loved. I loved doing it. It was awesome. It was absolutely fantastic. Another thing that happened in college is that I was in a public speaking class with a girl who was the director for an off-campus improv comedy troupe that at that time was really, really, really popular. It would sell out an entire opera house. So this wasn't like a rinky-dink social club. It was a real thing. Like, people paid money in an opera house to go to these improv shows. It was a really big deal at that time on campus. One of the people who was in this same troupe is Nice Peter from Epic Rap Battles of History. So if you know Epic Rap Battles of History, like, I have a loose connection to Nice Peter because we were in the same exact, not at the same time. He was a couple of years ahead of me, but he was also in this same improv comedy group. Anyway, I had gone to the shows because it was really fun, but I had never thought of being in it, honestly, just because I was like nervous and shy about that. I just didn't think I could get up on stage and do anything like that. And improv in general is nerve-wracking because there's, you don't have any lines. You're making it up as you go along. So there's like a way like higher added pressure to doing improv because you're like proverbially naked on stage. It's not like you can rehearse a bunch of lines and then just perform them. You're just walking out there and trying to be funny. It's nerve-wracking. Anyway, this girl I'm in this public speaking class with, she ends up pressuring me because she thinks that I'm funny in class to audition for this improv troupe. She's like, I really want you in the group. You need to come to auditions, which just the auditions for this group were kind of crazy. Like, a lot of people wanted to be in this group and not that many people made it. I think at that time they were probably like, I don't know, like 8 people or so, like, give or take, in the group out of, the dozens of people that would audition. So anyway, long story short, I didn't want to do it. She asked me to do it. I figured, all right, if this is something that I don't want to do, this is like a very weird lesson that I've learned in life. And please don't extrapolate to everything, because not every circumstance fulfills this. But there are some times in my life where someone else had to tell me, hey, you would be really good at this, so you should do that. And like, against my own wishes, or I guess my own fears, I just said yes. I'll just say, all right, like if I don't want to do this, but other people really think that I should, I should probably just listen to them and just do it. So this was an example of that. So I not only ended up auditioning and making it into the troupe. When she graduated, guess who she asked to take over the group? She asked me to take over the group. So now I go from being too afraid to even audition for this thing to now I'm the director of the thing. So now I'm in charge of the thing. So now I'm coming up with, who's in the group and what games we're playing for the show and what the theme of the show is, and making sure we have posters made and what do the posters look like, and are we going to do skits? Like we started doing skits in between. Are we going to have, stand up in between? What band is going to play? Like the interludes between skits and blah, 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 all this other stuff. So now I'm in charge of that too. I wasn't in charge by myself. There was a co-director who, obviously did a lot of the heavy lifting with me. But the point is just like, even in the, handful of years that I was in college, again, a place that I didn't want to go to because I just didn't seem to see the reason why. The things that I got out of college were things like making comics and running the comic section, expanding that and doing satirical essays, joining that improv group that I was afraid of and ended up being in charge of it. So a lot of stuff happened. It's not like I just went to class and then I went home and, got drunk. It was like I went to class and then I went home and I worked on other stuff and I joined other things and I ended up leading other things and evolving other things. Even in the evolution of doing the comics, I ended up doing other comics where, I got bored of drawing comics. Then I ended up doing like a photo comic, and I would get different friends of mine and dress them up in costumes and take photos of them. And then I would lay them out in, panels. So it was like a photographic comic instead of an illustrative one. The other thing I forgot to mention is before I moved to Portland, I got really into music and I ended up starting a band. And that was like all I focused on outside of work. And there's always been like some big project, no matter what I was doing during the day, there was just always some big project outside of work. So I've had, a bunch of different jobs, a lot of different restaurant jobs, manual labor jobs. I did radiant heat for a little while with my dad, and some odd jobs like painting with a friend of mine, whatever. But there was always some other project that kind of I had to look forward to or focus on or be passionate about or be excited about working on. So the project that I was excited about working on before like after college and before YouTube was music. So I ended up just like obsessively playing guitar, obsessively writing songs, convincing a couple of friends of mine to start a band. We recorded an album, full album, and then we recorded another EP after that and went through that whole process. So that was like a huge chunk of like 2 years of my life, was doing nothing but play music. And then when YouTube came along, I was like, all right, I did the music thing. That was fine. Now I'll do the YouTube thing. And I've really been doing just the YouTube thing kind of since then, because of all the opportunities that came along because of how popular Vsauce became. So all of the different like brand opportunities that I got with, for instance, doing the thing in Hawaii where, I got to go to that Mars simulator in Hawaii and make a video about that. Going to San Diego and going on the nuclear sub and making a video on a submarine with a Navy nuke. Doing the TEDx talk in Vienna. I mean, that was another thing that I didn't want to do. Just because I was nervous about it. Like, I don't know what to talk about. Like, I have no idea what to talk about. You want me to do a TED talk? Okay. About what? I have no idea. So I don't really want to do that. But that was another example of like, I don't want to do this. They really want me to do it. Everybody I talk to says that I should do it. So I will just do it. I mean, the good thing about doing stuff like that is like eventually it is over. And then you can look back on it later and then think, I guess I'm glad that I did that. Last year was complete. And then, well, I guess I should talk about just the evolution of Vsauce 2 as well, because it's not like I've just cranked out the same stuff over and over again. There's been really nothing boring about any of this process. I did the whole series about I would call it I initially called it the human series, then it turned into the invention of series, but it was the videos like the invention of blue, the invention of toilets, the invention of dragons, the history of recording ourselves, the Dunbar's number video about like what is friendship. Did those for a little while, but all along the way, like each one of these little segments was like all encompassing as far as my energy, like just pouring everything that I have into each one of these like periods, pouring everything that I have into the invention of blue, spending 7 weeks on that video. And then as soon as that video is done, upload it and then spend 6 weeks on, the invention of pets or whatever the next one was after that. I don't remember. So it's just like island hopping over and over again from like intensely, I don't know, just focusing on projects to where I get to the point where, and then we did the math game stuff. That was really intense, doing all the recreational math videos, like the paradox videos, the birthday paradox, all the different Conway and Martin Gardner games, trying to figure out a way to turn those into videos. Because if you've ever actually read, which you probably haven't, but if you've ever read like the math journals or, the recreational math books of Martin Gardner, where they come from, it's admittedly dry. You're just reading text about some sort of quirky math thing, the game of Nim or whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, how is this a YouTube video? What sort of props do we need? Like, how are we going to visualize it? What is, I came up with the idea for the whiteboard table. So the whiteboard table, that was a means of like, all right, how am I going to explain this math stuff in a way that has good pace, is like going to flow really well between my explanations and visualizations. And the idea was, okay, what if the table that I'm sitting at is I could write on it? Is there a way, well, not only write on it, but be able to erase it? That's important too. So, all right, how can I do that? Can I get a table that's made out of whiteboard material? No. All right, can I make one somehow? Yes. Turns out that 3M sells like huge sheets of whiteboard stickers that are meant to go up on a wall. Okay, why don't I just put that on a table? I'll just line the table with this whiteboard sticker and boom, now I have a whiteboard table. Now I can hang a camera overhead that will point down at the table so that I could talk to the camera in front of me and then draw on the table and, record what I'm drawing at the same time. Then we transitioned into doing like long documentaries. There was like math crimes, a lot of different like injustices that were, solved by math. We did that for a while. There's just been lots and lots of chapters here along the way. And then last year's popular science chapter, that was just incredibly intense, trying to revive a completely dead channel that, that hadn't had any uploads in a long time, with brand attached to it that's been around for, 150 years, et cetera, et cetera. When Mac comes back to the podcast, I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But now I'm, working on Sleep Warriors. Now I'm working on the novel. So now every day, even on the weekends, I'm trying to chip away at this book, because the thing about writing a book is, first of all, you need a million ideas for a book. Writing a YouTube video is how long, even if it's a long YouTube video, you're usually in a long video, you're just kind of telling a story. You sort of know the beats, you know how that's going to go. It already exists. You're not making it up, really. You're refining it, trying to make it as compelling and understandable and entertaining as possible. But you're not coming up with it from scratch. You're trying to write a book from scratch. It's like, okay, now what? You write a paragraph, you're like, okay, now what? You write a sentence, you're like, well, now what happens? So it's just like constantly thinking about what's going on with the book. And the other thing about a book is that you write and you write and you write and you write and you write. And the light at the end of the tunnel is very, very small. It's very small. It's not even the videos I did for Vsauce 2 that took, 6-7 weeks. It's like, all right, well, after 6-7 weeks, I have a video that's done that I can share with everybody, and I can move on, and I can see if people liked it or not. With the book, it's like, okay, month and month and month and month goes by, and you're like, is this any good? Like, what am I doing? Like, is this a tremendous waste of time because it's garbage? I have no idea. You really feel like you're just dumping words down the toilet. I mean, you're not. It's a cynical way of thinking about it. But in comparison to making a YouTube video, you're writing a script, and then not too long after, it turns into a thing. It becomes something that you can get feedback on. With a book, you're like, man, I don't know when I'm going to get feedback on this thing. I don't even know what's going to happen to it. And hopefully when I do, people aren't like, wow, that was not very good. That was pretty boring. And you need to start from scratch on this. I mean, I actually am starting from scratch on this book. I took 2 or 3 months off years ago from Vsauce 2, thinking like, oh, I'm going to write a book. I'm finally going to write this book. And what I ended up writing was like a 70,000 word outline of a story. It was not a book. To give you like a measurable example of how different the first manuscript I wrote was compared to this one, the average word count in a chapter in that first manuscript was like 2,000 words, and now it's like 4,000 words. So it's like literally twice as many words per chapter, which is where you're supposed to be. I mean, you're not supposed to be, a chapter is not supposed to be only 1,700 words. Like, that's nothing. And as another example, like what happened in my initial manuscript in chapter 1 doesn't happen until chapter 8 in what I'm working on now. So anyway, that's what I'm working on now. I'm really excited about it. It's called Sleep Warrior. I have Sleep Warrior Instagram and Twitter accounts and Facebook. I don't really update that. My feelings about Facebook. But if you want to follow those accounts, check them out. But anyway, that's where I'm at with this whole like life passes you by in the blink of an eye. And, high school seemed like yesterday. Not for me. It did not seem like yesterday. It seems like a billion things have happened since high school. And they have for me. So is this in any way like actionable advice for you? I don't know. I have no idea. Your mileage is going to vary here. Everybody has their own set of life circumstances. You have your own strengths and weaknesses. You have your own like tragedies or catastrophes occurring or family situations. There are so many variables here that it is totally impossible. And I would never, like, even the gall of this old man to be like, here's what I would do if I was 18. Like, I would not do that. And I'm not trying to do that with this episode. I hope it doesn't come across that way, because I have no idea what your life is like. None. And there are plenty of trade-offs that I have made in my life that you might not want to make in yours. Like, do you want to just work on projects all day and not spend a whole lot of time with anybody else? Because that's what I did. Is that a trade-off you like? Would you rather spend time with your grandma, or, I don't know, have children? Like, there are plenty of things that are probably a lot more important to you in your life than having some, terrible band as a hobby, or making YouTube videos or writing a novel that may or may not be any good. So in a lot of ways, the point is you do you. But, and here's my caveat, it's worth considering. The reason I think it's still worth, and I hope you enjoyed this episode listening to it, because I think it's still worth considering the fact that a potential buffer to insulate yourself from the feeling of like your life flashing by in the blink of an eye is doing a whole bunch of stuff, is having different experiences, is saying yes to things that you really want to say no to. Because maybe you should do that thing that you're uncomfortable with. Maybe it is better to have that experience than not. If you can. If you can't, that's another story. If you can, if you do have these opportunities that arise, it might be a bad idea to just keep doing the same thing all the time, even if it's comfortable. I mean, I don't know how much this aligns with the podcast that I did about, missing the comfort of being sad. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that's my concern for people who are worried about, well, I didn't have enough time, or, oh, this feels like it just happened yesterday. It's like, well, is it because you haven't created other experiences since then? You don't have other memories? You haven't really done much else? Then yeah, maybe it does feel like yesterday because you don't have like a whole bunch of things to fall back on in between. I don't know. This is just a hypothesis. I'm throwing it out there. But I do know that probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast have similar anxiety to me. This is a very Kevin podcast. Like, Matt does not have this problem, I can assure you. If Tabor was here, he would just probably be making fun of me for even complaining about this sort of thing. But yeah, like, there are a lot of things that I did not want to do, that I was scared to do, that I was afraid to do, that I was nervous about doing, that I felt like an intense amount of anxiety about, that I only ended up saying yes to because I trusted the people around me, that they had the best, because you don't always know what's best for you. That's like another thing, not to go off on another tangent when I'm trying to wrap this up, but like, for the love of God, I can assure you that you don't know yourself. You often don't know yourself as well as other people know you, because you're in your head. You're completely biased. You can't have an objective opinion of yourself. So there are things that you do and the things that you like and things that people notice about you that you don't notice about yourself. So it is possible for other people to be able to tell you things that, like, hey, you would like this if you actually did it. Or, hey, you would be good at this. Trust me, I know you would be good at this if you would actually do this. I mean, one of the things I remember actually from high school was I had a teacher who really liked me, who actually told my parents that going into computer science was a terrible idea for me, that it was not a major that I would excel in. I don't know how she knew that. I do not know, because I'm me and I'm stuck in my own experience. I have no idea how she knew that I would hate computer science and it was a bad idea. But lo and behold, a few months later, I'm dropping out of college because I hated computer science. So, like, I had to go through that experience to learn it the hard way. But holy crap, like, 4 months earlier, some teacher who I had one class a day with already knew. She already knew. Literally already knew something that I didn't know about myself. So anyway, that is one thing that I do think is actionable, is that if you get an opportunity to go to a place, to get a job, to join a club, I don't know, whatever it is that you don't really want to do, it's possible you should. That's all I'm saying. It's possible you don't know what's best for you. It's possible. You should consider that you don't always know what's best for you. And other people might know more about you in that regard than you know yourself. And it works the other way around too. I mean, like I said, with the computer science thing, I thought I knew what I would like, and someone else knew that I wouldn't like it. And I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought I like computers. I like working on computers. I'm going to go for computer science. And someone else is like, you're not going to like that. I'm like, yeah, I will. Nope. And no, I did not. I did not like it at all. So anyway, I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Matt should be back on the podcast soon. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the podcast and for sticking with us, during our unfortunate lull there for several months. I hope that you're glad that we're back. And I'm really glad that you're back. So all the people that join during the recording here, it's great to see all your faces. And again, thanks to all of our patrons for keeping the show going. All right, I'm out of here. Until next week, I will see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. And the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and the Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Ferry-kun, Jen Mafasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Piddler, Ryan Steer, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Bidiover. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, and of course, Trev Stead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer, editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yosua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it, and thanks to Main Gear for powering all our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.